Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about us at officehours.global. Our first hour is generally just about general media and virtual discussion, any questions that you have. Second hour is about things that we think are a little bit more important, things that we've asked to talk about as a group. Second hour today is building kits for live streaming. So how do we approach that? How do we think about it from very small ones to very big ones? We can talk through some of that. Tomorrow we're going to talk about picking the right mixer. Tuesday is a bit of our audio shows, especially also if you have audio questions, bring those on Tuesdays. Wednesday, we have the folks from AJA here. They're going to be talking about the AJA Bridge Live and all the things that it does. It's pretty cool. It's got some NDI support and lots of streaming support. So stay tuned for that. Thursday, of course, Office Hours Update. We'll let you know how things are going. We made some big moves over the weekend, and they're not all working yet. So we'll talk about the process there. We have the folks from Parsec joining us on Friday. So they're going to be here to answer your questions and give you an overview of what Parsec actually is and where they're going. And then, of course, Saturday is the long day. We've got education at 8 o'clock in the morning. And of course, general discussion at 7, but 8 o'clock we'll have education. And then at 11, we'll be cooking with Damayanti Gajar again. Green masala and bean subzi, I think. I'm excited about it. We're really starting to get into a groove with that. So I would definitely check it out as a collaborative learning lab. It's pretty cool. And then at 12:30, it's 12 o'clock right now, but we have to move it. At 12:30, we're going to have the Belfast method. We're going back to Belfast, doing a hybrid event in a Belfast method. So we'll have an audience in the crowd. We'll have a couple artists there to do some work. So it's going to be interesting. So that's what we have coming up. And now we will jump to the questions. Go ahead, Bill.
Good morning, all. Guy Cochran from Seattle has the first one, and it is a doozy. For those that missed it, what the Morgan Freeman happened on show 600?
I don't think we can talk about that on the show. I'm not sure if it's. I think that's a what happens on Sunday stay Sunday. Next question.
Okay, moving right along. Nick Pavlinak is up next from Southeast Michigan, and he says, I was watching the Adele one-night concert on CBS last night, and the whole time I was wondering what the group here thought of the production. Sunset at the observatory had great visuals with many camera angles.
Let's see. Oh, sorry, I got myself twisted around here. Nope, nobody had any questions. No, did anyone see it? Did anyone see the Adele concert? I don't even know when it was. You saw it, Jeff? Did you like it?
I thought it was very well done. I just spent 2 weeks in LA working with a lot of production people, and there was a little murmur in the back of all the work going in between it, right. And I was very impressed. It had some great visuals. It was very commercial, though. It was not natural. That's the way I put it. Very, very polished.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of it. It was they were at Griffin Observatory overlooking Hollywood, and then of course they had Oprah and Adele doing the one-on-one interview in, I guess, her backyard or something like that. And of course, if you saw the Harry and Meghan thing, it looked exactly the same for that one. And excuse me, yeah, the really cool thing I liked about the concert was they were projecting Adele on the side of the building of the Griffin Observatory. And I thought that was a post-process thing, but I think that was actually live while they were recording it. So it looked really nice. Lots of people in the seats too, and somebody got engaged.
Whoops, mute.
You're perfectly in sync.
I didn't do that. It's interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I saw it too. The whatever Predo does to his projection, I think that's kind of what they were doing on the projection of it, which was kind of cool. And yeah, they had a lot of drone shots, so that made it an interesting production. But yeah, very well done.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next here from Belfast in the UK. I'm sorry, that's the next one. Have you heard of anyone that carries more than one laptop on the road? And if so, what bags or cases would you recommend for 2 MacBook Pros, a 14 and a 16?
Go ahead, Guy.
So I use this Thule bag. It's called the Gauntlet, and it's pretty slim. And inside, I can carry laptop 1. And typically, I don't carry a MacBook Air in here, but I carry, just so I have cellular backup, I carry my iPad Pro in here. But yeah, this is nice because even if I go into a restaurant or something, I don't leave this in the car. This goes with me, and so it's pretty sleek for that, and it just goes over your shoulder. It's got a carry strap, so if you could find them, they're like around $100 or something. Not bad. Thule is the brand. Thule.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Yep, I have used 2 laptops on live events, particularly useful when I was having to project the slides. I'd have one laptop dedicated to that, and then the other one would deal with all the video stuff. I've got a bag which I can hold up. I don't think this particular one is made anymore. This is a Targus bag. But the nice thing about it is that it has 2 separate padded sections you can put stuff in.
Go ahead, Jeff.
My go-to for many of ours, we don't carry Macs in them because we don't carry Macs, but we do carry PCs, so real computers in them all the time, and heavier computers, to say the least. So our backpacks are all e-bags, and the e-bags have a fantastic design. It's orange inside, just like he just showed too, so you don't lose things down at the bottom, which has always been a beef of mine with backpack designs. You just throw everything in there. But they're worth it, and they got a great warranty. I've ripped a strap off of one because I had 6 laptops in it, and threw it over my back and caught it in time before it hit the ground. But whenever it warranted back, they sent me a brand new one, which was quite nice.
Go ahead, Rupert.
So for regular travel, I mean, I sometimes, well, quite normally travel with 3 laptops quite often, and I've had very good luck with these Swiss Gear bags. The either the laptop, the backpack version on the left here. I've had definitely 3 laptops in there. It's got separate zipped compartments, and the right there, the rolling version, get 3, maybe even 4 laptops in there. If you need to, and of course that rolls along and it's got all kinds of pockets and pouches and stuff on there. The backpack version on the left there, it's actually bigger than it looks. The side pocket there will actually hold a 12-inch crowbar, which TSA will find and remind you that you had there.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I've used this Targus bag for many, many years, and yeah, I've gone through. This is my 3rd one. I think this is the exact one. This will hold 2 laptops. I think the 16-inch and the and I've done 17-inch laptops in that thing back in 2007 when I first got it. And yeah, the warranty is great. You just send it in, they'll send you a new one, and I've ripped them out a few times. So.
And the one that we had a standard issue for Pixel Core a long time ago, where these we don't in 090 we don't travel as much, but with Pixel Core, we use these Rush 24 bags, and so these have plenty of webbing and strapping. I can put a tripod or monopod in the front across here in the back. It kind of sticks up like a spear, which you can go through. You can't take a crowbar, but you can take a long monopod through it. Lots and lots and lots and lots of pockets. So it's hard to show here. It's all black, but the Rush 24 is what we have there. And then typically almost all of our laptops, almost all my laptops have some kind of black, like a snap-on case on the outside of it, so it doesn't get all scuffed up and dented and everything else. And then when I pack them in my backpack, I usually put them in neoprene. So they're kind of double, handled. And for me to take 2 or 3 is pretty normal, and then a couple iPads and then usually 3 or 4 phones. so I'm pretty well connected with lots of little bits and bobs. Next question.
Daniel McFarland in Belfast in the UK says recommendations on how to output PowerPoint or Keynote presentations via a Blackmagic Decklink SDI on Mac OS.
I actually don't know how to do that out of the SDI output unless it's just seeing the desktop. Now with Keynote, remember that what you can do is the easiest way to use Keynote is to present to a window, not to a screen, and then you should be able to drag it. But you have to be able to see the desktop there. Go ahead, Jason.
There's an app called SDI Scan Converter that's actually extremely stable. I don't like playing around with software patches, but this one's actually very stable. I've used it for days on end, and it's never blipped.
Yeah, you could also do something that some kind of Mac application that would, something like Memo Live will just take, will grab onto that screen and send it out over Siphon. So that would be another way for you to send it, or Black Siphon, to send it out of the SDI. Next question.
Comes to us from Nick Pavlinak in Southeast Michigan. And Nick says, I was wondering what low-cost synthesizer the group would suggest for someone just starting out wanting to experiment at about under $200 US.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I would go to eBay and try and pick up a used synthesizer. Depends on the kind of synthesis that you're looking to explore. Additive synthesis, wave synthesis, FM synthesis, all different kinds of synthesizers. My first synthesizer was an FM synthesizer, a DX21 from the 1980s. And it's a little complex synthesis, but it's fun to play with. And it gives you that great sound from the 1980s. On the software side, Arturia just released a new software synthesizer called the SQ80V. And this is just kind of beloved in my heart because I had the ESQ1 by Ensoniq, and it was just one of my favorite synthesizers ever. It was incredible at the time. It had a lot of polyphony, and you could play all kinds of different drum sounds and keyboards and a bass sound and a lead sound all at the same time. This was unheard of in the 1980s for this ESQ1. So the SQ80 is made by Arturia, and it's $199. It's a software synthesizer, and through SysX, you can download all kinds of patches on the internet and load it into the software synthesizer. It's really a great wave synthesizer to explore and play around with. I think you would enjoy it a lot, but I would go and check eBay and get a used synthesizer, and you'll have lots of fun.
Michael, were you the one that recommended the Waves plugins that were on sale yesterday?
Yes.
You're a very expensive friend. That's all I have to say. I went in there and I was like, oh yeah, then I could have that. And then I could get this. And
yeah, this one's $38. Yeah.
Somehow I ended up about $150 deep, but I got a lot of new tools. So anyway, it was
it's fun.
Cool.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I've been playing with the IK Multimedia Uno synth, and this is a $199.99. This is technically a non-keyboard style synth, although you have the keyboard layout on the bottom. It's more meant for creating the patterns and replaying them, setting them up, and things like that. If you want something with a keyboard, there's many different keyboards. You could literally go to Goodwill and find a keyboard with a single MIDI connection, and then use software to bring that into the keyboard, so you can learn how all the patterns and things like that. So a couple different ways to go.
Yeah, for $200, what I got myself into, and then it became real addiction problem, was a Neutron, the Behringer Neutron. It's just a fun little synthesizer that I started with, and I was like, this is amazing, and I lost hours and hours and hours playing with it. The other one to think about is for free is the VCVrack.com. That you can download basically a VCV rack simulator. So if you decide that you can learn how to use it and get really good at it before you actually spend the real money on the VCV rack itself. So I know that Todd Reynolds has talked about that one in the past. And then finally also, and I don't know what the prices are on these, but another one that's pretty cool as far as kind of next generation synths I think are the Teenage Dot Engineering are pretty cool ways to kind of approach that. I've got a lot of friends that play with those as well. All right, next question.
Next one comes from Vincent Gerald of Louisiana, and he says, for those who are using Blackmagic cameras for video streaming, what lenses are you using and why?
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so I assume you're talking about just the streaming like we're doing here. So I have a Blackmagic 6K Pro, so I have it mated with a Canon 35mm 1.4L. And the reason I selected that was it's a fast lens, so you can get a shallow depth of field.
And go ahead, Jason.
Oh, man, I have quite a few. So I too have a Blackmagic 6K Pro. I'm not using it at the moment, but my very favorite lens for that one is actually one of these, the 70-200. It's just a beautiful lens. But as far as the smaller ones, what matters a lot is power zoom. And there are only a handful that will actually allow you to do this, you know, directly in the in the setup. The Panasonic Lumix X Vario Zoom 14-42 is a pancake lens, and that's the one that I'm on right now. The other one I like is the Lumix Vario PZ 45-175, but that's an extremely long lens for such a small sensor.
Go ahead, Bill.
I use a Canon 1635 L glass lens. I think it's f1.2. It was expensive because really good glass is always expensive, but I justified it by the fact that I use it for still photography as well. And so investing in glass is one of the few things that really holds value a long ways. Although I will say now that the new M lenses and other things, the new sizes, some of that old glass might take a little bit of a hit, but it's nice to have a lens closet with a lot of options.
Yeah, the one that we ship with all of our cameras is the L series Canon 24-70. The Sigma would probably work as well as a web camera, but the 24-70 is a really good. I find that most of our cameras get set at 35 millimeters, and so, but you don't want to have a fixed lens because you want to be able to move in a little in and out depending on what you're actually doing. So it helps a lot to have that variability. I keep a set, so I have a 16-35, 24-70, 70-200. 100 to 400 with a doubler. That's like my set of anything outside of that. I've got a couple primes and everything else, but I rent almost everything else. So that like covers almost everything I need to shoot. The only one that I really want to buy that for no good reason is the Venus Optics Leoa 24 millimeter probe lens. It's got a long snoot. It's like, and I want to stream with that so badly. I don't know why. I spent like an hour this weekend looking at all the stills, and I was like, nobody's shooting video with it. And it's just a Canon lens. So anyway, it's just totally absurd. I think we just stream ants all day. All right, next question.
The fly-through model cityscapes lens for commercials. It's great lens. Mitchell Hill's up next, and he says from Wilmington, Delaware, and here on the panel, what do you use to cut or trim acoustic foam wall treatment?
We'll start with Mitchell actually on this one. What's the question there?
I don't know if it's okay to answer your own question, so I was reaching over.
We do it all the time.
To answer the question, I use this, which, come on, focus, there we go. It's an electric knife, the same one you're going to be using on Thanksgiving. It just works so much better than a knife or a pair of scissors or anything else, because what'll happen is foam will tear. And this has the opposing blades that go this way, and it just goes right through it like butter. And it works great.
Good guy.
Very cool. I was going to say you can also smash it down if you get like a metal T-square, like one from a hardware store. But the big question is, why do you want to use foam? Because foam is also used as windscreens on, shotgun mics and other mics, and it's transparent, so it goes right through. What you really want is something that has some rock wool or something in it, so that it absorbs not just the high frequencies, but the mids and the lows, and bass traps and all that stuff. But I don't know if I would put up just foam, because we've done it for years. I mean, I'm guilty of it as well. I've used egg crates, the ones that come in packaging and whatnot, and blankets will work because they're a little more dense, but just be careful about using regular foam because it's not doing as much as you think. It looks cool though, but there's a lot of science behind it. So you might want to jump on like Prime Acoustic or FZorb or one of these sites that shows some of the science behind it.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I really like Guy's answer. But for just answering the question about cutting foam, a knife, this is the simple solution, but foam, like all rubbers, will blunt any knife very quickly. Pull the foam out tight, run the knife down it, and you get a clean cut. But expect the knife to be blunt after several meters. The better tool to use when cutting any form of foam rubber is a hot wire, which will also allow you to do complex curved shapes. You can find those all over the place for art supplies. Guys who build radio control models use them all the time to cut the foams for the wings. So that's a better solution. But this is important. When using a hot wire to cut foam, do so in a well-ventilated room. The fumes can be toxic.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Oh, I agree on the hot wire and anything circular. If you're doing a saw that goes back and forth, you're definitely going to get some jaggedness on that. I like the zip snip. I've shown this before. This little thing will cut through a lot of different things. And if you take tape, like painter's tape, or even duct tape, and put it on the top and the bottom, that will reduce the amount of tearing from from whatever fabric you're cutting.
Next question.
Bob Goldstein, Manchester, New York, says, hearing rumors of a Mac Mini.
I think Dan Goldstein.
Oh, Dan Goldstein. Sorry about that. Manchester, New York, Winchester, New York. Boy, I got both of those, and it's Westchester, so I messed it up 3 times. Sorry about that. Hearing rumors of a Mac Mini with an M1 Pro and Max chipsets, what places in a workflow could this rumored machine take over?
Go ahead, Jason.
The answer is just about anything that you would ever need to a workflow to do. By the way, your India set, Alex, finally ground my Mac Pro Max to a halt. Bringing that zero, the zero killed it.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, there's a test file that nothing I've pushed up against it has survived yet. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm waiting for the next big Mac Pro. Hoping that there'll be something new that involves Apple Silicon, because I figure that's where the future is. So there's sort of an in-between step there, I guess, is what we're talking of doing it to the Mac Mini. The question is what's going to come first. Probably the Mac Mini with the new chip.
Yeah, I don't expect to see the Pro until the end of 2022, early 2023. It's probably the earliest we'll see the Mac Pro, and it'll probably be a crazy beast, as far as speed goes. I mean, at the speed, the question is whether they're even going to use an M1 of any kind inside the Mac Pro. I think it'll probably be the M2 that we see, related to that. Or M3, one or the other. The big thing is with a Mac Mini at 64 gigs of RAM, you can pretty much do everything that you're doing production with. If you have especially if you're in a ProRes environment, the ProRes accelerator chip built into it. From every person I've talked to, I haven't gotten the new laptop because I really want the Mac Mini, but it's speeding up the production time by 8 to 10 times. If you're in, a lot of the tests we've seen are like, oh, I took Blackmagic Raw and this is how long it took. Well, that's not a good test. The test is once you get it to ProRes, how long does it take to work on it? And the reason that they're not giving you those numbers very often, Renee did, but a lot of people aren't, is because the numbers are so absurdly fast that it doesn't, it's hard for them to, show those, and have it make any sense for folks. Go ahead, Jason.
How does it compare to the Afterburner card?
It's the Afterburner card built into a chip.
The Afterburner card
built into a chip,
miniaturized and doubled.
Put into a chip.
There are 2 of them.
I mean, essentially, we're at a point where if you're doing video production in the field, there's no other. I mean, if you're willing to do ProRes as far as your cameras and everything else, there's nothing that's anywhere in the ballpark right now as far as speed goes with that laptop. And so a lot of us would want that at home because we don't travel anymore, and we don't want to travel anymore, and I never want to get on a plane again. so anyway, go ahead, Jason.
So the video that I put up earlier was shot entirely in ProRes and entirely on the iPhone. The render took 4 minutes, and that was out
for how much time? How long?
The whole video was maybe 1 minute and 3 seconds. There were a lot of cuts, and you know what? Oh, I take it back. It wasn't all ProRes. I think what slowed it down was the slow-mo. It was 1080 at 240.
Right. Yep. Next question. Next question. Did we lose Bill? I'll jump in for the next question here. The Jack B from Phoenix, Arizona said, recording a podcast with 3 hosts, 2 remote, 1 local. What is the best way to capture the whole video? Currently using Zoom as the meeting method. Go ahead, Rupert.
This is, I think, something that Riverside FM is sort of specifically designed for. It'll do your local records, but also give you a real-time feed to interact, and then it'll upload those ISOs either in real time if it can, or after the fact once your session's complete. But just watch out that your devices that your contributors are using are going to be compatible. So you'll want to stress test that ahead of time. And I think they've got some pretty good demos on how to do that also.
Good guy.
Yeah, Chris Fenwick uses the ATEM ISO, and he'll do isolated records of each through Zoom rooms, and then just pull them in through HDMI using pluggable technologies, HDMI adapter. So that's one way. The other way is NDI. So with Zoom NDI, you can just suck those into something like vMix and then use multi-quarter or live mines or something along those lines.
Yeah, and it depends on how technical they are. When we have folks that are highly technical, we'll have them record on QuickTime. Like just open up a QuickTime window, because you can send it to Zoom and locally to a drive at the same time. That quality is going to be higher than Riverside, but Riverside's great for less technical, folks. And there's some other tools that are probably on their way. Next question.
I'll go ahead and take it if you want me to read.
Absolutely.
Hasma Gajar in Cape Town, South Africa says, need a lab for newbies on Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. Use 6K as webcam, had record 6K, extend video, monitor HDMI using LUTs, and BM LUTs selected. I was completely saturated and had a hard time shading. Rotem to the rescue. Deselect LUTs with HDMI. Solved. Labs, please.
Yeah. What happens there is you're mismatching the LUTs and the correction. So that's the it'll be, we should definitely do a lab. We'll work on some kind of 6K lab maybe next week. Next week's a good day for labs, I think. Go ahead, Guy.
Oh, sorry, I just hit the next question.
Okay, go ahead.
It went away. Sorry. Yep. We'll go on to Matt Cool, and he says, I'm trying to perfect a green screen recording setup. What do the best chroma key? What's the best chroma key? ATEM Mini Pro, vMix, Premiere, or After Effects?
Go ahead, Jason.
That's a bit of a false equivalency. The first two, or I'm sorry, numbers 1 and 3. Let me get this backwards. 1 and 2 can do it live. 3 is for post. So at the end of the day, the two are not at all the same. If you want to do it live, the ATEM Mini Pro is going to do a great job. If you want to do it in post, Premiere and After Effects, and I would add Final Cut, do a great job.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, the best live hardware device is the Ultimat, always has been, and our friends at Blackmagic have them now. So you want the real time, that's the way to go. In post, as Jason just pointed out. Plug-in wise, I prefer to work in the Adobe workflow. I like Primat. There seems to be a BCC, Boris Continuum effect version of it, and a Red Giant now owned by Maxon. And in a pinch, Keynote. It's not Keynote, it's Key whatever.
Keylight.
Thank you. After Effects. I'll get you pretty close on a plug-in version.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm going to be a little bit slack at the moment and point out that this is a vMix green screen, and you can see how badly I have it set up. So please don't criticize me for that. It was for government work, and it's 2 a.m. But that's how around the face. That's just the presets in vMix. So that's not bad for a starting point for a chroma key.
Yeah, the big thing is just losing hair detail. That's what you're giving up. Any keyer can do a really good job if your green screen is constant. So if Stuart undoes his green screen here for a second, I'll point out it's not really the keyer that's having trouble there. It's the green screen. So see all those shading points.
There is no hair detail.
Well, right, but there is on the sides. so if you look at all the wrinkles and all the shading and everything else, what that does is it creates a larger amount of green that has to be removed. When you remove that larger amount of green, what you're going to do is cut into people's hair detail and their edge detail. Edge detail is what sells a green screen. And so any keyer will work with a flat green screen that is well lit, that is evenly, and when you look at it on scopes, the variance of the green screen should be no more than 10%. So a very, very, very even green screen, especially from a shoulder up, there's not really any excuse to not have it that way. The best green screens out there are composite components. They're Lycra. You pull them taut, and then you spray them with water, and they will get rid of all the wrinkles. And so they are really the best. But all of them will work inside of that. As far as a keyer goes, Keylight is probably one of the better ones, and the Final Cut keyer is really good. Those are probably the two best off the cuff. Of course, you can then go in. Fusion has a good one in the Blackmagic side of things, and then the real way you key is what we call divide and conquer, which is that you build areas and you key them separately and then reassemble them. Next question.
Hey, Alex, I'm back if my levels are okay.
Yep, go for
sorry,
it.
whatever that glitch was, it knocked my monitors into a weird mode and I couldn't even see the questions. So I
there
had to
you go.
reboot.
Yep.
All right, moving along. The next one comes to us from Aaron Giancarlo and in Flagstaff, Arizona. Need a waveform vector scope software that does, what does the panel suggest within a reasonable budget?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, they're all going to be a little bit expensive if you want the good tools. Scopebox is what we're using here in this meeting. It says DV Store Conference Room, and my trials, or not trial, but my license is an annual one. It's about to expire next month, so I'm going to switch over to this one, which is Nobe Omniscope. There's also a demo if you want to try that one out. It's it depends on what you call inexpensive, because a license for this one is going to be in the $250 range, but it's super nice. And then the other one would be, just if you're on a PC, is vMix has some good tools, and they're all going to cost money. I don't think that there's an inexpensive one. Hopefully somebody else could chime in either in the chat or somewhere else to let us know.
I will say,
cheaper.
I will say that the Nobe, the time to pixels, we're going to try to get them on to talk about it. It's probably the best one out there right now, and it is Mac, PC, I think Linux as well. I mean, so it's got a lot of different options. Very, very flexible, and there's so many options built into it. It's more of a, we have to spend a whole second hour and then a lab really understanding all the things that they've added to it and keep adding to it. By the way, also, if you go to Time and Pixels YouTube page, incredible videos on how all the scopes work. So definitely, I think I tweeted it out a little while ago, but I ran into it. He's been putting them up for months, and it's really a good primer for that. Next question.
Next one comes from Daniel McFarlane in Belfast in the UK. And Daniel says, recommended DMX control solution for M1 Max. Both software and DMX interface integration with Stream Deck and BitFocus Companion would be ideal, but not required. I've heard Light Key is a decent option.
Go ahead, Jeff. Can you hear us, Jeff? Oh.
I'm sorry, that shouldn't have been checked. I didn't check that.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, John.
So I spent a lot of time researching these items last summer, and Light Key is the best option for a one universe system on the Macintosh. It's a great piece of code. I have it running, and it does run natively on the M1 now, so that's a good choice. I decided to move off to Luminaire on the iPad because I had too many applications running on my M1 already, and so I moved off the DMX to run on the iPad using Luminaire. And I use the Intech encoder.
Next question.
Aaron Giancarlo is back from Flagstaff, and this time asks, when you save settings in an ATEM ISO Extreme, does that save the Blackmagic 6K camera settings?
Go ahead, Jason.
It saves the color shading that can be done in the Blackmagic panel, but it doesn't reinforce it to come back. But when you say camera settings, I think what you're referring to is something that needs to be saved locally on the camera.
Yeah, it will save the settings that it has for the camera. So it doesn't have all the settings for the camera, LUTs and so on and so forth. So it can't rebuild your camera from scratch, but it can. It'll save all the settings that it sends to the camera. And usually what happens is it doesn't apply those to the camera when you restart it until you touch one thing. Then you touch it and immediately it applies everything, back to where it was. Next question.
Dan Goldstein in Westchester, New York is up next. ATEM Mini Pro is outputting extremely high audio levels. I need to drop the gain to -30 by 5 dB to avoid any peaking. Am I missing something in my chain, or is this proper? The inputs are Zoom, Photoshop, and PowerPoint.
Go, Jason.
You sure are, assuming that it's the microphone. Am I getting this wrong? Is it the microphone
I
or is
think
it the audio?
When you say -35, you're getting very close to -40, which means that I will bet that you are sending a line input into a microphone setup. So you're basically, so the ATEM is set to mic and you're sending it a line. Because anytime you start turning something down to the point where you're getting close to -40, you probably have a mismatch of what it's expecting. So just go into your ATEM and set it for a line instead of mic, and you should be fine. Next question.
Johnny Estias in Manila in the Philippines is up next. I've been looking for a virtual stage timer solution for my virtual events. I was going to submit my question to the panelists, but today I found one. He found stagetimer.io. Have any of you heard about it before? And if so, your thoughts on it?
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I credit Grant Whitehead for sharing this one with me. I've used it a couple times. Stage Timer is essentially a web-based countdown timer or count up timer or current time, and allows you to have a separate output window and a separate control window, all via the web, so you could pass control to somebody else to reset clocks or swap in graphics or those kind of things. It's not bad. So far, so good.
Yeah, it looks really good. I have not used it, but it looks great. So I definitely would check it out. Next question.
Stuart Fairweather here in the panel from Melbourne, Australia says, has anyone been experimenting with turning their spare Raspberry Pi 4s into a Video Ninja cameras? Would you believe there's a command line for that? And then he parenthetically notes, apps are so yesterday.
Good, Stuart. Have you done it? Has it been successful?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. There you go.
I've been experimenting just using the basic camera at the moment, and its frame rate is the same as any IP sender or any WebRTC. So it's hitting 25 and 30 frames a second without a problem. Audio is just plug in a USB dongle or plug it into a like the Behringer mixer or plug it into a USB mic. I want to be able to try with the Rode Go Duo or the two Rode Go mics on one receiver, but it's absolutely fabulous. And I just noticed my video seems to be breaking up in the grid view where it's not in my NDI feed. Weird. But yeah, it's working really well. I'm not using it at the moment though.
Next question.
Our friend David Brady in New York says, looking to get started automating simple Zoom tasks, meeting creation and staffing and so forth. I have zero programming skills. Where's a good place to start? Languages or methods or lessons that he can look to?
Go ahead, Rupert.
So there's a few ways of automating some of the tasks. There's a nice app out there called PipeDream. It's basically like an API interpreter, but you can use it to automate a lot of stuff in Zoom by a drag and drop type of method based on actions or tasks in all kinds of other applications. So from your other desktop apps, maybe you can automate things. You can go in the back end there and customize all the code, but they've got a lot of just drag and drop examples of little automation tasks. PipeDream, it's available in the Zoom app marketplace.
That's great. Next question.
Stuart Fairweather here in the panel, Melbourne, Australia. Lenses for Blackmagic Design Pocket 4K. Anyone had compatibility issues with the Lumix 14-42? Got an odd bug to report.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Okay, firstly, just to clarify, this is the Lumix 14-42 that Jason mentioned earlier. You'll notice there's a wide to not tight zoom adjuster on the bottom of it. The one I'm talking about, however, is the older model. Now, holding one of those in my hands on the weekend, press the autofocus button, and it would snap to the wide end and stay there, or snap to like almost macro focal length, and it would not autofocus at all, and the focus ring was disabled. Press the button again, and the focus ring would work, and it was really sharp. It's a lovely lens. Put it on a GH4 and it works perfectly, but on the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, it was not functional for
Could that be a firmware thing? I think MFT lenses can be pushed with firmware.
Or even a Blackmagic firmware.
Itself, but I checked the camera and the camera was up to date.
Yeah. I don't know, but I have the same lens, but it's the newer one. So I don't know. That's a really old one because my lens is old. So it's 14-42. That's got to be at least 5 years.
Is the one that's been available in the shops in Melbourne at the moment. Right. The other one is not yet available in the shops.
Right. Next question.
Comes from Graham Cardwell in Northern Ireland. And Graham says, with Black Friday and Cyber Monday on the horizon, if you were looking for a gimbal, would you choose phone, action cam, or standalone like the DJI Pocket? Use cases winter sports, so DSLR camcorders would be too big.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, using a stabilizer. I'm assuming you're not holding it while you're actually doing the sport, but if you are, then a stabilizer is just going to be another clunky piece of equipment there. So what I would highly suggest is, instead of I do have the DJI Pocket 2, and that's when I was going to Infocom. That's what I used for my primary camera, and it's a great camera, but it's not waterproof. So you'll have to get a housing for it if you decide to use it that way. But I would just go for a 360 camera, like an Insta360 or a Theta. And then unless you need like better quality. It does, both of them do great jobs with the video. You buy enclosures for them so you can plug them in, you can put them on your helmet, put them wherever you need them to go, and then you're always getting the shot there. Insta360 also has the R2, I can't remember the exact model number, but basically it has a modular piece, so you can go from an action camera to a 360 camera just by changing out the lens.
Go ahead, Jason.
I love my Theta, and I've routinely just skied downhill. I was taught on an ice hill in New York where you're taught to ski without poles, so that's I'm really quite accustomed to doing it with a Theta or with a DJI Osmo. The Osmo 5 is pretty good. I actually like the 4 better. I think it's more stable.
Yeah, what I've used all of them. Maybe not skiing, but in a lot of fairly action areas, and I would probably lean towards the action camera myself, only because it's something that I'm willing to lose. If I put my phone in it, it's not a problem. I have the little Osmo Pocket as well, and I have the Theta, and I have a lot of these, and I think the resolution for the 360 wouldn't be enough for me. The action cameras now at 4K or higher. With the newest GoPros, you have really high resolution and some stabilization built into it. And then so the 360 doesn't have quite the resolution that I'd want. The phone means that I'm putting my phone somewhere where it might not survive. So to me, I've kind of leaned when I do those kinds of things with the action cameras, which I have a lot of. Next question.
James Babbitt in San Diego says, what are the steps you take to set up a new M1 MacBook Pro, and which applications do you add now using an Intel MacBook Pro?
Go ahead, Bill.
So the key to me is whether or not you're scrupulous about keeping your current system cleaned up. And when I say that, back when there was the 3264-bit transition, I had a lot of old 32-bit software that was not going to make that jump a couple of years ago. So I was scrupulous in going through everything and dumping literally every file, application, utility, and whatever that wasn't 32-bit clean. Once I did that and got my Mac 64-bit clean all the way through, then simply Apple's Migration Assistant has been super useful and easy. If you can find any fast pipe way to connect them using target disk mode or something else, you should do that. But even through wireless, taking that few hours to set up Migration Assistant and just say clone everything on the current system to the new system, you go out, have dinner, come back, and everything's fine. That's been my experience anyway.
I have to admit that I'm religious about not doing that. So I never, ever migrate anything to anything. I always add everything very close. Like, what do I actually need on this computer? And I slowly add those things back into it rather than ever letting it copy, because I'm always afraid it copies old stuff that doesn't really work or the not newest versions. And I've had so many problems with any kind of like update. I don't even update my systems. I just blow everything out and put it all back in. And to me, it's an opportunity to clean everything up. Go ahead, Jason, real quick.
Alex kind of killed it. I am completely against migration under any circumstance.
Next question.
Moving to Chris in Wisconsin. Chris says, how can I check my levels solo before conference calls without just asking participants if they can hear me okay?
Go ahead, Rupert.
And what you mean by conference calls? I mean, if we're talking about Zoom, a good way is to jump into after hours. You can always do a quick mic check there in Zoom. But for Zoom standalone, you can do a test Zoom meeting at zoom.us/test, and that'll let you record and it'll play it back to you. But if you're not using Zoom, or you're jumping between different systems like Zoom or WebEx or something else, then you really don't know until you get into that system, because the audio device behavior can change, as you go through these systems. So if that is the case, it's best to buddy up with somebody who's also got access to that system. You can call in and do a real world test, but bear in mind that how you sound is also relative to how other people on that call may sound. If the speaker before you is higher than you, people may have their volume down, and then you come to your turn and you'll be much lower. So it just goes to prove how important like mic checks really are for an event or an important call.
Yeah, go ahead, Lois.
So, I'm really pretty low tech. I don't have lots of input devices. And one thing that I do is when I get something that it sounds really good, like this meeting, I'm going to go and open my various settings windows. I'm going to take a picture of what those levels are. So the next time that I want to do something, I can go look at my picture and set my levels to what they were. And I'll know that it was good last time. Maybe it'll be okay this time.
Definitely gets you in the ballpark. Next question.
Ernest Floyd in Bastrop, Louisiana says, I've got some government officials that do a lot of phone interviews for TV. I want to build them a kit to plug into their iPhones so that they don't sound so bad. What do you recommend?
Go ahead, Rupert.
So if we are literally talking phone calls on a iPhone, then you can break out from a Lightning into a USB, a Lightning to audio interface, break out separate microphone and earphones. Hopefully that's probably one of the most critical things, is get them some sound isolation. But if it truly is a phone call, I mean, that's going to be your limiting factor in terms of quality. You can get as good to a certain point, but if that's what it is at the end of the day, then you're going to have some limiting factors there. And if they are government, people on government devices, just watch out for any hardware restrictions or permissions issues you may run into there.
Yeah, real fast, Bill.
I've got a lot of friends who have used the Apple GI mics that plug directly into it and do upgrade the sound of the phone mics.
Good, Mitchell.
Check Rode.com. They've got quite a few different products for that. Also, if you need a little more sophistication, angryaudio.com is a Bluetooth device the broadcasters use to transfer the audio into the Bluetooth back and forth.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I like Android phones when it comes to doing anything like that. That way I can actually do some controlling. There's software that I can control it with. And also think about getting, whatever phone you use, get a cage so they can put it on a tripod, so they can put a light on it, they can put a microphone on it.
Yeah, one of the things you want to look at is almost all of these broadcasters have other ways to contact them that professionals use. You want to find out what they are. So when people say, they want you to be on a show, you want to reach out to them and find out what are all the options that you have available to you. Even things like FaceTime are going to be 10 times better. The problem is, no matter how good your interface is into the phone, you're still being compressed into a phone connection. So you want to get past that phone connection as fast as you can. Using almost any of the IP connections, whether it's WhatsApp or FaceTime or anything else, is going to be better than your phone. And then you can deal with USB interfaces and, the variety of other things. Jason, you're holding something up. Go really quickly.
Yeah, this is the Pulse, and this is the USB-C version. I believe they do make a Lightning version, but what's nice about this one is that it's a lavalier, but it also has a headphone jack coming back at you. So I've had good luck with this on an iPad.
And and the way I do it when I'm on any of these interviews is that I of course use the Dante to Bluetooth, the Audinate Dante to Bluetooth, and then hook Dante up to my and then connect it to my Scorpio, and then I use this mic, and they don't know how that happened, when they hear it on the radio. So next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia says suggestions for a 2-input XLR digital mixer to feed the ATEM Extreme. High and medium cost suggestions.
Go ahead, Stuart, real quick.
I'll go with the budget solution. And remember, when I say this, I have Behringer mixers. But I love how quiet the self noise is in these Yamaha MG series. They are beautiful to my ears. And the price you saw listed there was the Australian dollars price. So if in the US, expect it to be a fair amount cheaper than that.
Go ahead, Mitchell, real quick.
Another way to do it is if you happen to have a Sony or other microphone, you can go into the attachment that's on top of it. Sorry about the focus here. That allows you to plug two devices into it, and on the opposite side, you've got the mixer part too. So it's all integrated into the digital shoe on the camera.
Next question.
Alex Jacobs in Oswego, maybe Michigan, says, does anyone have a good option for color correcting a Logitech Brio other than the Logitech app? Mine always seems a little red.
Go ahead, John.
Mr. Jacobs, you forgot to mention whether Windows or Mac. On the Mac, there's two good programs: webcam settings and manual cam. Those are the two best controllers for the Brio.
Don't move any new ones over. So next question.
Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware says Sony just announced a new Venice 2 Cine camera, 8.6K or 6K.
Mitchell, can you hear us? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. One of the issues that you should be aware of is that there are problems right now with Sony Venice talking through an M1 Mac. It will not work. until they get that problem straightened out. So be careful.
Yeah, the Venices are great, great machines. So, the way for the shots that we've done with Venice, I think that there's a range of, I find the Blackmagic to be most practical, the Airy to be the most artistic, and the Venice to sit somewhere in the middle, of being both practical and artistic. And so it'll be interesting to see, where they take that. Let's go ahead and get the last question for the first hour.
Sure. Todd Reynolds in North Adams, Massachusetts asks, is there an adapter made which might allow me to use a Sony lens on a Blackmagic Micro Studio 4K like a Sigma 16mm f1.4?
Sorry, I got my windows all. There should be Metabones should make one. Go ahead, Stuart.
Nope. Simple reason, the E mount is a shorter flange focal distance than the Micro Four Thirds mount. You can go from a long mount to a short mount, but not a short mount to a long mount unless you're making a macro lens.
Yeah, I reversed it because we've had ones with the Sony mounts that we can then put other lenses on the front of, but we haven't been able to go the other direction. So you're absolutely right. And for those of you who had other questions in here that we pushed back, some of them look like new names that aren't used to this. They're back in your notes folder. So at the end of the hour, to keep track of time, we'll often push those questions back, but just bring them in on another hour, and we'll address them at that point. All right, let's go ahead and so we decided there's been a couple requests to talk about basic building of live kits. So I thought that this would be a good day for us to talk about it. We can talk about, I think we can talk about all different sizes of those kits, but probably aim at the ones that are kind of middle and smaller. But I can talk to a couple larger ones as well. So let's go ahead and if you have questions about live kits, then go ahead and throw them into Mukana, and we'll go from there. All right, let's go to the first question.
First question, the new topic is Andy Kokendorfer's from Vieira, Florida. And he says, unfortunate that vMix does not run on Mac OS, but can you recommend a reliable Windows laptop and capture device to run vMix on the road? And he's asking that as a Mac guy.
Go ahead, Stuart.
The capture devices are going to be hard. Okay, laptop, you want to look for a decent processor and a decent GPU. I'm recommending again and again and again to grab a Quadro GPU, not a GTX. The reason is you get more hardware-based NVIDIA encodes, and I will put the link in the chat for the list of GPUs that are supported for that. Okay, capture devices for laptops. Yes, you can use the USB capture devices. That will give you 1 or 2 inputs. If you want, say, 4 inputs from 4 cameras with HDMI or SDI, you end up looking at something that'll plug in through a Thunderbolt bridge. So like the eGPU enclosures, only you're putting a capture card inside them. That gets expensive very quickly. If you can, swap it over to IP for this sort of small production, as in use something like the IP bridge that I've got there. So it's HDMI out of my VG900 into an IP source to vMix, simply for practicality of shipping. You can put something like the AJA Kona 4 into an eGPU housing, but you really need Thunderbolt 3 or USB-C Thunderbolt, or that one, to be able to have the bandwidth to capture HD from HDMI or SDI sources onto a laptop.
Go ahead, Guy.
You also need an SSD inside.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, a lot of the popular gaming laptops, surprisingly, even from a local Costco, will work as long as they have a decent graphics card. And by decent, even some of these 1060 and 1080 cards inside will work. You want something with more than 4 gigs of video RAM, because it does rely on that video card quite heavily. If you get a laptop that doesn't have one, you're not going to get very much real time out of that using vMix, like real time color correction. And then, like Stuart was saying, the encoding. Me personally, I would probably rather have 2 laptops rather than 1 hot rod. So the hot rods are like the 3090s. They have the 3090 graphics card in them. They're going to be about $4,000, and those are by MSI, Republic of Gaming. I'm using a Razer Blade. It's a previous generation, but it does have the 2080 card, which is a 8 gig card, and that is it's a decent kind of halfway point. You can get that one for about $2,000. So I'd rather have two $2,000 machines, because then I can segment things and have a backup in case something goes wrong on a show. So sometimes I'll set one up as a encode machine and the other machine as the cutting machine, and then I'll route things so that in case of failure, I can jump to the other one. So just depends on what you want to do.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Depending on the travel, I highly recommend that look into a desktop over any laptop, because a desktop is very modular, and you can make it as small or as big as you want. You can put a better graphics card in there. You can put in more drives in there, and you can also bring in a laptop with you to control it. So you could easily do a Nook. I have a case, a roller case that I can put into a plane carry-on if I wanted to, and I'd use Intel Nook for the main board. For the capture device, I have the Sonnet SC1, I think it is, that can bring in one card, and I've got the Blackmagic 4 HDMI, 4K 4 HDMI that goes into that, and then through Thunderbolt 3 you can then plug that in from there, and then once again you can remote into it via a laptop, or bring a portable monitor, keyboard, mouse into it and work from there. But once again, you're just going to find that the power on the laptop, it's getting better, but desktops will always be able to overpower any laptop that you bring.
And next question.
Aaron Giancarlo in Flagstaff, Arizona is back again with, can Alex list all the software that is used for the remote kits he sends out with a quick description of what the software does?
Yeah, I was trying to get them. For some reason, one of my phones will not talk to my ATEM. So so I'll just list them off. So we send out a kit. We send out a 6K with a vMix pre and an ATEM. And so these are the remote kits that we send out for this. And so these are again, we record locally, but they can also be used as live interactions. And so these are again a 6K with a teleprompter and a Mix Pre and then an ATEM. So the software that we have running on a Mac Mini M1, it utilizes the Bluetooth capabilities. So we have Wingman to see what's going on within the Mix Pre. We have the Blackmagic, the Bluetooth Blackmagic control that we use to control the camera. And then we have the ATEM switcher software as well to do any fine adjustments there. Those are the major pieces of software that we use within the M1 to control almost all the bits and pieces. We have AnyDesk, because we're too cheap to buy to pay the $1,100 per unit cost of whatever TeamViewer, which is repugnant in my opinion. It's not so much the money; it's just the insult of it, and that I won't use TeamViewer anymore. And anyway, so that's the big software that we use, and then we send it out with. Now the thing that we're about to change is most likely that we're going to move the lights, which are currently 68Bs, to most likely mixed panel 60s or something like it, where we can have DMX control, because we want to be able to control the color and the intensity of the lights as we put them together. And I apologize, I just couldn't get my phone to pop up, and my photo thing doesn't work correctly on this Mac. So anyway, that's the software that we use. I wouldn't say that it's a perfect solution. We're constantly improving it, but I don't think it's definitely not as easy to set up as some of the all-in-one systems that we've seen sent out. But I do think it looks a lot nicer, and that's what we, in the end, we get measured by the look of how it looks. Next question.
Moving on, Aaron Giancarlo is back again. How are the kits sent out, and how are they returned?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
For me, basically, I had this little kit right here. It was an Android phone with a caged around it and a boom microphone. And of course, we could switch it out for a wireless microphone, depending on the task, light up on top. So what we did was we got the Pelican case. This is the Pelican Air 1655. I might be wrong on that. Oh, no, 1605, excuse me. And so we brought that in. The one thing I like about that is how the latches are on that Pelican case, because you got to push the thumb in to bring it up and back down, and of course you can zip tie it. So what we would do is we would send it with instructions inside and a return label back to me, and then I'd close it up and I'd take 2 zip ties. Don't think about locks, it just doesn't work. Zip tie it and then send it off to FedEx, UPS, or whatever, And then, like I said, with the return label, when they're done with it, they just have to put it back into the envelope, and then it comes right back to you.
For our smaller kits, of course, we just send them out. However, we send them out with instructions. Of course, the most important thing to send with a kit is the instructions. So we send out, printed instructions. We send out a link to a PDF that they can download, and we send out a movie that we shoot with an iPhone. So, like a little quickly edited movie that explains how to put everything together. And usually, the movie, by the way, is almost always sped up. So you don't need to sit there and watch it. I cut it as tightly as I possibly can, and then I'm usually running it at 2x or 3x, so that you can watch something in 2 or 3 minutes and really get the whole thing, because they can always pause if they don't understand that. There's a backup with a PDF that they can go through step by step and see it. The next step for us is to integrate those into both, so that there's a video and in the PDF or into something, so that you can open it up to make that work. So that's how that's the most important part. Our larger kits, the one I was talking about before, those go out in 3 1650 Pelican cases, and so those are shipped to ground. And we typically, in COVID times, we would ship them to somebody who would then drop them off. Nowadays, we'd ship them to somebody who will set them up for the VIP that's going to get it. It's a VIP. If they're sending a kit that big, it's a VIP, and so we don't want them to interact with it at all if we don't have to. So anyway, so we, it's pretty paint by numbers as far as how to set it up, though, and we've definitely had CEOs for very large companies put it together in their house by themselves. So it's not a particularly, it can be done in that area. So, but that's how we ship it out. And in the United States, we use typically FedEx Ground. Overseas, we use a company called Rocket. So if we're sending something overseas, we just budget for it, and we have Rocket manage it. They'll manage the carnets, they'll manage the shipping, they'll manage the delivery, usually to the minute. So Rocket, generally, if they say they're going to be somewhere at 4 o'clock, I've had them bring half a truck to Davos and deliver it within a minute of when they said they were going to be there. And so they're expensive, but they get it done. And people say we've tried to save money, and we had DHL. By not using Rocket, we had to send it to the wrong country. So it was in Italy, and it was supposed to be in Germany. So we just have given up, and we just use them to make sure it works. You do want to bring it back if you're going to almost any country outside the United States, because of the carnets. If you leave it there, you have to pay, incredible duties to leave it there. But as long as it's going to come back within a year, you can have it stay there for a while. It just has to have a round trip planned for it, and then have it come back. And if it doesn't come back, then you have to pay all those duties. Next question.
Garrick Parmelli in Columbia, Missouri is up next. He says, looking at webcams for a remote kit that can be completely controlled remotely, looking at the HuddleCam HD Pro and the OBSBot Tiny. Any advice between the two, or a recommendation for another one?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So the OBS bot, I got it right here. It's a multi-gimbal 3-axis. What's really nice about it is I can actually turn it without it even turned on, and I can kind of set it to forget it. Using it as a remote kit, I have thought about doing that, but the biggest problem with that is the software. It doesn't really do that great of a job in remembering everything that you need, so you'll have to set it up every single time. Whereas the HuddleCam HD, it won't do the full this would be like a 270 degree. It doesn't do a full 360 for the OBS bot, but it doesn't do that with the HuddleCam, but you can get some great angles. I actually have my HuddleCam right over my head. It comes down on my desk when I do unboxings, and I can zoom it in, and I can move it around fairly easy with a pretty decent video signal that comes out of it.
What do you think of the image quality compared to a Brio, as far as the OBS bot?
Brio over OBS bot. This isn't 4K. They do have a 4K model that's in Kickstarter right now, and once I can get that, then I can test it. But right now, this is only 1080p.
It seems like a really exciting camera, and just not, just the quality when we saw it before with the 1080 was not what we'd use for a show. But we were really excited about the idea of a small little device that isn't too expensive.
One other thing to think about is with the OBS bot, it does gestures, so you've got to make sure that you turn the gestures off. Otherwise, if somebody's using their hands,
it does all kinds of things.
Yeah,
that's funny. There's a little too much AI. Next question.
Sam Downey in Bristol, England's up next. Could the office hours area group produce a 2-page live streaming kits PDF aimed at the mid and home user of equipment, computer, devices, camera, audio, LX, etc., and make the PDF available for the office hours website?
Yeah, we'll have that up by the end of January. Yeah, we're making the move to one thing at a time as we piece this stuff together, but we're definitely going to be putting guides, videos, as well as PDFs. And one of the things you're going to see a lot of as we move forward into next year, this is not really a live streaming thing, but more of an Office Hours 2.0 thing, is an integration between everything that we're doing. So there's a video on the YouTube channel, which will not be my channel, it'll be the Office Hours channel. There'll be a matching PDF and possibly even audio where there's a discussion about it. If you want to listen to it for 3 or 4 hours of us going off on something, you can. There'll be a short video on how to do it, possibly multiple videos, and then there'll be a PDF that you can refer to and a web page. So those are all things that we're the idea is to integrate a lot of that content across all of those things. I think that for the most part, what we don't see in social is people thinking about all the different ways of using media for that process. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he says, if you're sending out a kit as part of a production, do you take a credit card number or similar as security to protect against the theft or loss of the kit?
Again, go Jeffrey.
For me, they're high-end people, they're high-end companies that I send my kits to. So if they decide to do something, then we're just bill them from there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we haven't had too much trouble with it. Remarkably, for the higher end kits, we tend to get them back. We had a lot of loss in the early days when we used to have probably 40 kits when we were doing Hangouts. It's Pixel Core. We would have 40 kits in the air, like just constantly somewhere in the world, and they'd come back and get refreshed. And our loss rate there was about 25 to 30%. And we kept on tightening that. We got to a point where probably by the end we were near 90%. What we found is that we had to pack it in a way that we had to pack it so that it was easy to repack. I know that sounds crazy, but you can't just pile everything in. It has to be very clear of what you opened and how, and had instructions on how to pack it back up and put it back together. So you have to think about how hard it is for them to do it. It wasn't because people wanted to steal the equipment. It was that it was too hard to put it back together, like too hard to put it back in the box. And so when we realized that, we just have to make it nice and easy for you to put it back in the box. Then we have to give you a return label so that it's easy. We give you the tape that you need to close it. We give you, like all those things where so it's a tape that you just peel off and put it on the top. Then you sit it down. But thinking about the overall user experience of not just getting it out of the box, but getting it back into the box, and then giving them a return label. And then finally, a phone call. So right after the show, hey, it's really great. You did such a great job. You were amazing. No matter what they did, we told them they were amazing. And then we would say it would be really good if you could send that back and let us know if you have any trouble. And then a week later we'd call again, and then a month later we'd call again. And we got about 60 to 70% after the second call, and we pushed it up to about 90% returns if we had that third call. Was enough, because then they'd be like, oh yeah, I didn't get it out or whatever. And so that was, and those were smaller kits that were only $400 or $500. Go ahead, Bill.
You know who does a great job of that? A companies like Lens Rentals. They've really turned it into a science, to the extent that the tape they send you to close the boxes back up have written stories on them that are fun to read. So you spend a lot of time reading the tape as you're packing it back up, and that forms the company bond. It's really fun.
By the way, when you send out kits, this is one thing you don't think, that we didn't think about for a long time, and I wish we had thought about it earlier. Number one is that we give our clients, the clients who are paying for the kits to be sent out, hey, we're sending kits out to all these VIPs. Do you want to put anything in it? And they don't think about that. And they're like, oh yeah, let's put a t-shirt in, and a hat, and a thing, and a thing, and a thing, and a pen, and a mug. And so you can, so we have a space that you can put like a little bit of stuff, a little bit of goodies, the swag that you don't get anymore. People love that. The clients love sending it out. The people love getting it. And then the other one that we do a lot of is cookies. So we finished the whole thing, and with the high-end kits, I do the kit with you, or somebody does the kit with you as you put it together to make sure it's there. And it's an unmarked box that sits in the third case. And at the end we go, hey, there's one last thing we want to add. Can you just, there should be a white box in the third case, and they open it up and it's cookies, and it's such a payoff after they went through the trouble of putting it all together and getting it all set up. It's just like they open it up, and and they're good cookies too. You can't keep them in our office because people eat all of them because they're really high end. I don't remember where we get them, but they're really good. Next question.
Jesse Mills, San Francisco Bay Area. GPUs for vMix. How important are quality CUDA cores versus RAM? At what point are the returns on investment diminishing?
Go ahead, Stuart.
Okay. The GPU is doing the calculations for whenever you're doing transitions. Unless you run out of NVENC cores, you won't be using the GPU or the CPU for doing the encodes. The RAM can be split two ways. You've got system RAM, which can be used where you're buffering the video, and VRAM, which is where you're holding the things that are about to be rendered. I would actually say that the VRAM is more important than having a high number of CUDA cores, simply because you want to be able to buffer the cameras ready to be able to be switched, and it'll do the calculations in it. But also, again, the point about the quadro cores and using the NVENC encoders to doing the hardware encoding, which reduces load on the entire system.
Good guy.
Yeah, this is weird. A Mac guy answering PC questions, but here we go. So here's my Razer Blade laptop, and you can see that vMix is hogging up a whopping 29% of the 32 gigs of RAM. Well, it's only utilizing 431, but look at how much of the GPU it's pulling down, 45, 48, 51. So I would say that your GPU is more important than the amount of memory. And you can see in this show that I'm barely tapping much anything, 14%, 16%. What's going on is, like on this shot, I'm actually doing a position. So this is I think Stuart meant to say transform. So I'm doing a transform here of scaling this video to 1.2 times. So it just depends on the operations that you're doing. And I'm pulling in a couple NDI sources and got some text and things like that. So it just depends on how heavy you want to hit it as to what's going to matter more. And we've asked this question to Martin over at...
Just go back to the task manager for 1 second?
Sure.
You were showing the RAM usage. We just need to make sure we point out that that's system RAM that the program's running in, not the VRAM on the GPU.
Yes, this is system RAM, and that's what the question is, right? How?
Well, it just says RAM. It doesn't denote whether it's system RAM or GPU RAM. I think maybe they were asking about GPU RAM.
How important are
because it's asking about the
cores versus
CUDA
RAM
cores versus RAM.
Okay,
you can
it could be read either way.
Yeah,
it could be read either way.
Open question. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else, Guy?
Yeah, Martin from vMix has said that there is a spot where you start to hit it. So like Jeff Keithley, who was just on the panel, he said that why are you going to an 8x for your productions, and we found that the 4Xs started to feel sluggish. So we were like, hey, this goes against what you're saying, but the 8Xs seem to feel more snappy. They feel like an i9 with a 3080 card locally here, even though they're up in the cloud. But you run a 4X, it's like $1.20 versus an 8X is like $2.40. So it's significantly more expensive, especially if you're doing multi-day events. So there, and you can actually max out these machines if you get like 100 inputs, a bunch of SRT inputs, a bunch of slides, because those count as inputs as well. You can quickly overload a machine and it'll straight up crash. So you want to be careful about buying too lightweight of a machine or putting too much pressure doing all these operations on one machine. That's why we like to split things out. So you'll see us have an ingest machine, a graphics machine, a cutting machine, and then an encoding machine. So we'll have 4 machines spread across in our VPCs.
Bill?
I just wanted to note that the trend in system on a chip that the M series from Apple has started may, and no one knows for sure, but it may extend out into the other manufacturers. If it does, I think there will be less emphasis on the GPU versus the CPU in machines because they'll all be on the same die. And at this point, you're going to buy a machine with both balanced parts at the level you need for your operations, and you won't have to specify one versus the other. So I think that's the future coming.
Yeah, I think that the hard part is it'll be 3 to 5 years away because they're still trying to figure out even how to get the agreements to make it happen. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of modularizing anything, just like Guy said. So if you got your graphics on one machine and you got your, and that main machine is doing nothing but switching between cameras, then, and then of course you can send it to like a video assist or send it to a stream box that'll send that out to your YouTubes and Facebooks and whatevers. That will help you, because if you're putting together that big of a machine, you might as well put together 2 machines, and things like the SPX GC that you can do. You can run that on a Raspberry Pi, and the footprint is super low, bringing that in, and that's going to save on anything on that main machine.
when we start talking about splitting it up is when I start going back into hardware, switchers and playback systems and so on and so forth, as opposed to software, because now I'm dealing with all those computers rather than dedicated pieces of hardware. Next question.
Eddie Martinez of Palo Cedro says, for wireless transmitter and receivers, what are you using to elevate over standing crowds, heights, many bodies interfere with signal transmissions?
Go ahead, Bill.
Tall stands. It wasn't intuitive to me because I always had receivers on my camera, but I realized that I was taking a short XLR out of that, and there's no reason not to take a longer XLR and put your receiver way up high on a light stand next to the camera, and then suddenly there's nothing between you and the transmitter. It's about as simple as it can be.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that is I tend to want that last leg to be carbon fiber as opposed to metal. I actually don't know if that's superstition or not. so I don't, but I can't tell you that that's absolute. I haven't gone and broke it down and what is my signal between a metal C stand that is really high up or a junior stand and a carbon fiber light stand, which is what I typically use for my antennas. It's just that the idea of metal, as someone who grew up making antennas, the idea of any kind of metal around my receiver, I try to avoid like the plague. So I try to isolate it there. Now, next question.
Scott Mueller in Clinton Corners, New York. Are you able to remotely control the gear and the kits you send out for existing installations? Must be remote pan, tilt, zoom, and ATEM control, remote audio mixing. What's the essential for remotely working from home?
Go ahead, Jason.
There is no essential that I know of. I've used Meraki routers in the past. This was a rig that I did way back when that, half the panelists were on the panel and half the panelists were remotely via Zoom, and we used Merakis to basically just be able to get into every network, and that worked very well.
And by the way, I left that out of my earlier discussion about hardware and software of our remote kits. Our remote kits all have I think they're threes. I can't think of them right now. MX3s or whatever. The Z3s. The Z3s are what we send out with all of them. And for higher profile ones, we get the Z3Cs, I believe, that have a cellular connection built into them. So we absolutely use that VPN solution to make that work. We think that the next generation is going to be using Streamweaver and a lot of other things to tie those things together. But right now we're still, tying back into those. And for us, we want it to be as remote as possible. We've been doing remote of some sort for the last 5 years, and we keep on wanting, if there's a piece of the puzzle that we're not remotely controlling, we're trying to get rid of that. Next question.
Roscoe Jones, up next from the panel often. When might comms be included in a remote kit, and what might they be? IFB for talent or a separate feed for local producers and stage managers?
If we have anybody on site, they're on comms. so they're and at least on something like Unity Comms or Agent IC for our kit, for most of our kits, as we sent them out for years ago, as we did lots and lots of these remotes where we were putting people on site. We don't put as many people on site anymore, but we would send out actual V panels from Clearcom that would IP tie back into our matrix, and so you had a full 12 key panel that went out with everybody, and you could actually take a MiFi and put it through a the Apple Express, and it would connect the MiFi to that, and then Ethernet back into the V panel. We worked at a cellular company that wouldn't let us on their network, so we had to actually use their cellular connection to get to the thing through the thing. Anyway, next question.
Next one comes from Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York. Henry says, what are the latest lapel mics and earphone recommendations to plug into a Sabrent USB audio adapter?
Go ahead, Bill.
I just want to mention, really, to start out, one overall thing, which is that the sensitivity and reach of mics vary a lot depending on the model you get. And depending on your use case, I have run into a lot of lapel mics and other mics that are too sensitive for a general purpose user. I've downgraded. I used to carry both ECM 77s, which are a very sensitive Sony mics, and 44s. And in about 50% of the circumstances, I would downgrade from the 77s to the 44s just because they were less sensitive and I would get more voice and less background in the room. So I would just pay attention to that kind of thing when you're figuring out how to mic a room that's untreated for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and might have air conditioning and a whole bunch of other sounds infecting your room.
specifically for the Sabrent, I think we're still using Piles and Pulsons. I don't think that there's anything else that we've started to work with as far as headsets go. As far as labs go, I don't know because we don't send those out very often. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, Rode just came out with this one here. In case you're looking at the Sabrent, this is one that'll give you two inputs now, so you'll be able to have two mics in case you have two people that you're interviewing, and then you also get the headphone back out. The cool thing about this is there's an app that you could plug into it that on the machine that'll have various things like they acquired. What's that company? I'm forgetting the name. There's some plugins that they have acquired that allow you to clean up. What is it? Big Bottom? What is the name of that one?
No, I don't know. But are these shipping? Because when they first came out, I was like,
no,
it's great.
They're not shipping yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, I was so excited about these. They're a little bit more expensive. I think they're like, what, $80, something like that, $70, $80.
$79. They're supposedly in the air, so hopefully we'll see them hit the ground here soon because boat is not working right now from Australia.
Yeah. So that's the I was really excited about them, even just a little bit more expensive, but really getting a lot more quality because they'll handle anything, right? TS, TRS, TRRS, TRRRS. Like they're finally smart enough to do that, and so that they look like really exciting ones, just not yet available. Next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana, is up next, and he says, what is the panel using for wireless in-ears for their kits, and do you expect them back with the kit, or do you expect them to be reusable?
We don't. So if someone's sitting, and we're sending, so almost all the time that we're sending out a kit, the person is sitting. And in that case, we want a wired connection. We will not add wireless to something that doesn't need wireless to be added. Wireless, especially when you don't have people on the ground, is just another variable that you have to manage. If they are moving around for in-ears, we're typically sending out the Rode go-tos. We send them out to go both directions. So in-ear for one direction and mic for the other direction. Although, and I don't know if Guy, if you guys hit this or not, but the I noticed on Saturday that I was using the Rode Go, and the Pile mic, which I plugged into it, just couldn't get to the negative 24. It was like negative 27, negative 28. I just didn't have enough oomph to it. I think I'm going to have to run it through like something to push it up a little bit.
And it was maxed out in the levels. You turned it up all the way.
Yeah, I turned it up all the way.
It should have enough.
Yeah.
And it was going into, what was the next device in the chain?
It was USB-C into a 2020 MacBook Pro.
Yeah, it should have enough gain.
Is there software for it to do any other? I didn't know if there was any Rode software.
There's a software by Rode that you can use to, like I was saying earlier, apply those different EQ effects and things like that.
So maybe I can look at that and see what it looks like. I was going to run it through Audio Hijack to kind of bump it up and play with it a little bit because it just didn't seem to have quite enough oomph. So, but that did worry me that I couldn't get what I needed. Next question.
Excuse me, Douglas Carmichael is up next.
I think you skipped Garrick's.
Did I skip Garrick's? Yeah, I was having trouble. Yeah. It seemed. Let's move it.
Here, I just kicked it back.
Moved it back over. Thank you.
And I think you also skipped Douglas's too. I think that
Yeah, something didn't cycle when anyway, we'll talk about that later. Garrick Parmalee, Columbia, Missouri says, what about microphone recommendations? Thinking about mics that are easy for non-tech people to use and set up.
So we often send out some version of a headset mic. It can be a DPA, a Countryman on the high end, a Pile on the low end, or a Pulson on the low end. But we tend to do that because we find, I know that Guy's about to show you some shotguns, but we find that shotguns and lavs pick up a lot of room noise. And so we're trying to eliminate variables when we send them out to non-technical people where they're just not going to be able to fix their room. And so for me, I'd rather have a little bit more sibilance, which is what we get from those headsets, than the room noise that's really hard for me to filter out. Go ahead, Guy. You were going to show the shotgun.
Yeah, the video mic NTG, it's a USB-C mic that actually sounds really good, but it is to get rid of the sound of the room, you really do got to position it very close. So,
right.
I mean, in movies, if this was a movie, you could see the framing that I would have to do. I could still get about 6 inches out of frame, and that's about on a shotgun mic. Even in a movie, you're going to be 2 feet max away from somebody. So, in a Zoom call, it's okay to be this close, 5 inches, and you can
It's just hard for us to get civilians to put the mic in the right place and keep it in the right place. You know, it's easier for us to get them to put it onto the thing that's making the noise. You know, like that's been our experience. But yeah, the shotguns sound really good, and you can see I was showing behind the scenes of the kit when I had my phone working correctly. Is that we shot? If I'm going to show up, I'm going to use a shotgun. You know, like I'm not going to, you know, and I use the Rode NTG 2s or 3s or something like that. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next with what audio interface would you recommend for a personal remote kit for live stream electronic music production? I have the Wave Sounds Grid system, but requires moving parts. Would the UAD Apollo X4 be a solid choice?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
The UAD would be an absolutely solid choice. They're fabulous things, but I just want to note that they are not lacking in complexity in this respect. I'm using right now an Apollo Solo, which in theory was a 2-channel thing. Much to my confusion in the first month that I owned it, it actually is handling 8 channels behind the scenes, and I had to dig in and find out how to configure it. And it took me a few days and some manual reading to understand how to eliminate all the many things it does for a music producer that they want that I didn't need for somebody sitting in a desktop. So absolutely high quality. The ecosystem is fabulous, all the plugins you could ever want, but not a simple thing if you just want to buy it, plug it in, and use it.
Go ahead. Yeah, and I think that, and how much is it? The X4 is like $1,800, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's $1,800. I mean, you just got to decide what you want it to do, especially if you already have a Waves sound grid. You don't need it to do anything. You know, you need to just get the signals in. So I'd be looking at something with more of a raw input. And for me, of course, because I often don't know whether I'm going to be on site or go somewhere else, you know, I'd strongly look at that price point. I'd be looking at the sound devices like the MixPre 10. You know, as far as that goes, it gives you a lot of flexibility of where you put it and where you take it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. And he says, when you send out a MacBook Pro as part of the remote kit, would you send out a 13, 14-inch or a 15 or 16-inch?
Go ahead, Jason.
I'll answer the question, but just so you know, I send out M1s. I don't generally send out a MacBook Pro.
You said M1 minis. You're saying M1s are both.
Sorry, yes. The M1 mini is what I send out. The 14-inch can do everything a remote kit would ever need as far as the M1 is concerned.
The Mac Mini will do everything you need as far as a remote goes.
Exactly my point. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't send out laptops because then you'd have to open them. You don't have to. You could leave them in there, but the Mac Mini is built to be just like in the brain that we use. We use Mac Minis because they're just rack mounted in there and they work great. But yeah, I don't send a laptop to someone. You know, if we need to use it, we might send somebody out with a laptop. But if we're going to actually send it out to somebody else, we just want it to be a dumb head, or not a head, and to something that we're going to control. And we don't want them to actually have a keyboard if we don't have to. We send the kit. The keyboard is in the box, hidden. So like, hey, you need to open it up and break the glass. But it's like break the glass, but don't let the users interact with it if you don't have to. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Next, what is the panel using for wireless in-ears for their kits, and do you expect them back with the kit, or do you expect them to be reused?
That one I think we did talk about already.
Okay.
Or did we? Did we? We'll wireless in-ears. I think we were talking about. I thought we talked about the Rode for that as a return, but maybe not. What I would say is that the ultimate one is the Phonak, which we have sent out in kits, which is amazing. It's just like the little Jack Bauer in-ear. You put it in there. It's super comfortable for really high-end VIPs. You have to remember that there's a little bit of shock and awe that gets you a lot more work down the road. So sometimes if you are sending out, we don't put those in every kit, but if you send out a Phonak system that you turn on and say, just put this little thing in your ear, they feel very Jack Bauer. And if you're sending it to a C-level, they talk about it a lot. And then the folks that hired you don't have any choice but to hire you again because they keep on talking about the cookies and the cool in-ear thing and the amazing whatever and the lights that ran on their own. You should not underestimate the power of shock and awe when you send out these remote kits to executives. Next question.
Alex Jacobs in Oswego.
Sorry,
says,
did I just skip you over, Guy? You jumped right into the area.
Well, just at if you were going for the holy grail there, I'm about ready to ship one of these to Jim Hankins, just because this is the crazy stuff. So you brought out the Phonak, so I may as well throw one back at you. So the Duet series, the M2 Duet by Electrosonics, this receiver, body pack receiver, sounds better than the headphones out of my MixPre. So I can walk down the block, literally down the block. I tested this, getting Dante input in my ears. It's meant, well, it wasn't built for musicians, but now I'm starting to see this pop up for musicians because it sounds so clean. So the digital to analog converters that they put in these receivers are just amazing. So I would challenge the Phonak. This thing rocks. So
no, the Phonak
in the mail. It'll arrive in the mail, Jim. You'll have this whole set to play with for the week.
The Electrosonics are way better than the Phonaks as far as the quality of audio. The Phonaks are just, you feel like you're a spy when you put them in. Like that's the only upside to that. Next question.
Alex Jacobs up now from Oswego. So many times we get pushback on sending users a bunch of hardware. They just want to open up an app and go. Thoughts on convincing them of the benefits? Most times we don't push because it ruffles too many feathers.
We push gently, down the path. We don't push hard. But what we do let people know, especially if we have multiple people at an event, we tell them, well, we're sending these to everybody, and we just want to make sure that you look as good as everybody else. There's a little bit of the, I've got a guy in the other room, and if he tells a different story than the story you told, that we use a little bit, and so it's kind of like, there's a lot of people that are going to look really good because they're using these kits, and you may not, if you're using your handheld, and a lot of we tend to joke around a little bit about a lot of these meetings are informal, and that's fine, but when we how we dress for a barbecue and how we dress for 500 people watching or 1,000 people watching is different. We're not in our cutoffs and in our flip-flops. We're in a suit, and that takes time and that costs money. Takes a little bit to set up. I personally hate wearing suits, so it's a good metaphor for me. But I do wear them when it's time to be in front of a lot of people where that matters. And so this is a place where that matters. And so, and then we let them be. And then what we do is we make sure that the people who got the kits look amazing, and the person who said they didn't want the kit looks the way they look. And it may not, you may not get it this time, but it's a good lesson for them. Sometimes a hard lesson, for them to do it. But as long as you make sure it's clear that everyone else was going to get one, and everyone else is going to look good and sound good. And a lot of times we talk about people's, your level of authority, especially when you're talking to C-suite, changes when you don't look as good. Do you think people will take you as seriously with jeans and a t-shirt as you will with a suit? I don't know. I don't know if that's, they may look at you differently. And I think that's actually been one of the problems that we've had with people believing things that they see on the news and things that they see from the government and everything else, is the poor video quality, poor production quality makes it feel small. It makes it feel less important, with less gravitas, and people don't pay as much attention. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, if you were designing a remote kit to enable belfasting of an existing venue's systems, what equipment would you include, and how would you coordinate with the venue? Great verbifying. That's fabulous.
Yeah, I think that it would be, you're not with that at that point. You're doing an install. You're going to be tying into a whole lot of things. You have to find out whether they have DMX systems, what their projection systems are, what their, and you're going to be better off in most venues taking over, like actually doing the work yourself, and bringing almost everything in, tying into a typical venue that's not already equipped. Usually they'll be very under-equipped. Next question. Oh, go ahead, Guy.
Sorry,
you got to move faster.
Yeah, at the last,
you're killing me
at the last minute. Let me back up. So during Matt in the Kitchen, we did something kind of interesting where we took a Zoom room on an old laptop. In fact, it was this laptop, like a 2013 old laptop, put a Zoom room on it, so $50 a month, and then we put a PTZ camera from Lumens, or you can get a Bird Dog, one of these ones that has a bit of zoom on it, like a 12x or a 20x, but it's got to have the UVC way of going over USB to get that far end control. And so you could send just the laptop, just the camera. And then if you're in a Zoom meeting where you have enabled far end control, the Zoom room can answer, and you got to turn on auto answer. So the end user could literally open up the laptop, plug it into Ethernet, and they're done. The app will launch automatically. Even if it was turned off, it can be a startup item, takes over the laptop, and then the laptop gets DHCP, and now you have far end control, because you can say, invite this this machine into the meeting, and you just say request far end control. It says, okay, granted automatically. And now you could pan, you can tilt, you could zoom, so you could frame up those shots. And if you have a 1080p account, you've got glorious, great looking video. Even if you don't have a 1080p account, because it's a Zoom room, it'll bump it up to 1280 by 720. So you're at least getting a really good contribution machine from far end. And you could do a couple of these. So, I mean, $50 a month, it's not that much. And an old machine like a 2013 will even run the software. So it's a nice option. And especially if you get good optics, there's some cameras coming out that have better optics from Panasonic that are now UVC enabled USB cameras. So look at those new ones. They're not shipping yet, but Panasonic just came out with some new ones because they realize that you can far end control these machines.
Have you tested those Canon $5,000 PTZs?
I haven't, but I'm hearing really good things about them. Those ones I don't believe are USB-C compatible.
No, they're not, but
you'd have to take control over NDI or something like that. But I'm hearing really good things against the $10,000 Panasonics. So at half the price of the UE150, you can pick up two of those. So the CN500s. This is why I wish that NAB went down, because I love walking over to a booth and going, well, hey, this over there, So, and then there's a lot more to it. There's the controls. Like, I love Panasonic because you can do things like ramping. Like Mickey and I jumped into after hours, and we were playing with the ability to ramp, meaning the deceleration. So how fast that the camera takes off when you go to do a move, and how it decelerates gently upon stopping. Because you don't want some of these cheap PTZs, it's aggressive. Like if you're watching that for hours, you're going to feel like you're tossed around. Like the one at my church, I feel bad for the end users because it's so aggressive. When I make a move, it's like, right. This bird dog, it's super smooth. It's like, it's amazingly smooth.
Right. Yeah. I almost never use PTZ. When we use PTZs, I usually assume we're cutting. Like we're not going to do soft moves until we get to like a telemetrics head, but some of the technology is getting better. Next question
comes to us from Garrick Parmalee in Columbia, Missouri. Could a MacBook Air handle doing Zoom calls as a computer in a remote teaching kit?
Go ahead, Jason.
That depends on the Air. So I'll give you the gotchas. You absolutely need an Ethernet connection, and you need to disable Wi-Fi. That's the first thing. Second thing is a matter of the processor and the resolution that you're running the meeting at. If you are running the last, I'd say, 2 years of Intel MacBook Airs, you'll be just fine. The M1 can handle anything you throw at it. But again, turn off Wi-Fi.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, we're using remote kits as a tool to bring talent into a centralized production. How far are we from seeing the Mobley process or the Belfast method become mainstream so that the central facility is no longer necessary?
I don't know if it's necessary now. I mean, I think that we can, there's a lot of meetings that can be all done without any central, location. We've been building what we call centerless events for a long time. I think that the hard part is some of the audio chains and so on and so forth, I find to be a little bit in color correction and some other fine tuning I find to be more difficult in the cloud. But I admit that I'm just used to hardware devices that have probably a little bit more control than some of the stuff that we can run in the cloud. So I think that that's really the fine details of color management and audio management are the things that I think are still a little lacking in vMix and the potato things and all those other things are still just you can get something done relatively quickly, but being able to do what we kind of expect from a broadcast perspective. And then of course there is stuff like Sienna and other things that do that. It's just that they're really expensive. So you have to know that you're going to do a lot of it to make it worth it. Next question.
And the final one in the early queue is Tommy Johnson, St. Paul, Minnesota. It comes in with, would the original Pocket Cam be controllable remotely and a good candidate for a remote camera?
The original Pocket Cam.
What if he's talking about the original Blackmagic Cinema Pocket cameras?
Oh.
So that first generation, maybe?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I felt like that whole line of cameras really damaged Blackmagic's ability to sell cameras for a long time. They were really bad.
There was a LANC control on the side of it.
Yeah,
but
it's just
that was more for starting and stopping recording, not for anything else.
Everyone starts badly. I mean, in a lot of things like that, and wow, did they start badly? Like those cameras just were boat anchors, very small boat anchors, very small boats. But they were, you know, I bought, and I'm saying this as someone who bought a bunch of them. I was all excited about using them as webcams, and that and the first Cinema, you know, the one that was like a little box. I don't know which one they called that. That was their kind of with an SD card, the SSD that went into the side and stuff like that. I had, I don't know, 3 or 4 of those, and they were horrible machines. You know, and so I think a lot of us were left questioning whether Blackmagic could do cameras when they first started doing them. And so the low light sensitivity is really bad. The stability is very low. So it was great when they came out with something better, you know, and slowly proved to us that they could actually produce a camera. But I think that I don't know if I would. I think I have too many scars to go back to that camera or those cameras. They were painful to use in this environment. We were trying to use them for exactly what we're talking about. so it was, and they were super painful to work with. Anyway, I think we ended a little early. We did get through. I think it was question our answer velocity. Oh, we got one more sliding in.
Yeah, slid in literally at the moment you were saying that it came in. And that's Douglas Carmichael. He said, what sort of fine details of audio management cannot be done in the cloud today? PhotoStream is using AMP, and he's got a link there on their local PCs. And I could see something like that in the cloud.
ProtoStream, though, I think is not doing it all in the cloud. They're moving it from one location to another, if I remember correctly. So they're doing it in the cloud, but that's a connection between two. So they're still using a mixer to get, you know, to do that as hardware. I think when you start getting into all the comms, the combined comms, the buses that we use, you know, I find that someone can prove me wrong, but outside of using like Sienna and some of the other things that are out there, cobbling that together with the stuff that I've seen so far, I haven't gone, oh, I can do that now. So I think that's where I'm left. And so until then, I kind of go back and again, for me, because and I admit this is not for everyone, but for me, because I'm interested in spatial and HDR, you know, not being only dealing with 2 channels is cute to me, but it's not something that I'm looking at. So I will admit that I'm a little myopic in my view of that process. So because I think that once people start streaming in 5.1 and above, it's gonna become competitive. And I know people say, well, customers aren't asking for that yet. that's not how I mean. How I work is trying to show them the things that they want, not how to wait for them, because customers don't know what they're looking for. It's like asking, you know, Apple doesn't ask the customers what they want. They create demand by doing something cool. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, Jeff Keithley was on earlier and jumped off. I believe he had a part in this new Harrison Mix Bus VBM. This is pricey stuff. I thought that it was going to be reasonable. It's not entirely reasonable, but there are some signal processing. Oh, and the other new news is that Harrison just partnered up with Icon. So Icon has the hardware, and then Harrison has this software. And then there's a lot of mix minus and ducking that can go on with Talent and, you know, the far end, so you can control speaker levels and things like that. So this is going to be over $1,000 on a yearly license. So it's not cheap, but it's worth looking at if you are getting into the cloud and want to do remote stuff. So Icon platform is the hardware, and then Harrison Consoles Mixbus VBM is the software.
And it sits inside of, it'll sit in the cloud?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that could definitely be, I mean, again, the main thing that we have to see is, okay, so I want, and I admit that we build really complex, or I tend to build really complex comms and really complex audio pipelines. And when I start trying to figure out how we do that in the web, I get stopped. So you know, I go, oh, we can't, that'll be hard, or that'll be complicated or hard to change. So yeah, well, I'll definitely take a look at it though. Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael is, if the issue is mixing live events from home is room treatment, couldn't with enough effort one build a treated room in a residence? How would you do that in a rented space, an apartment, and where you can't alter it?
You float the room. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
And I've just done that, interestingly enough, not by floating the room, but by taking my voice booth, which is a commercial voice booth, and building it into a bedroom. The room next to me has it's a normal sized bedroom in a standard place, and I built my voicebooth.com voice booth in there, so I have an absolutely isolated place to work. Now, it's not the whole room, but I have a camera in there, and I'll be coming on occasionally when we get all this finished, the same way I did in the early days of office hours. And so I always have a place to go away when the environmental noise, when we don't have much plane traffic here, but traffic, thunderstorms, regular stuff. Since I do voice work for a living, I can't be shut down if a client wants my services when the environment is not cooperating. So I need that in there. That expanded largely. You could get one of the really big voice booths and move the panels in and assemble it inside a room, and you'd have something.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael again said, cloud virtual room simulation plugins like Waves NX, and they've got the link there, could they be useful for mixing spatial audio in untreated rooms?
It's gonna be really hard if you don't have a treated room. It's just, it doesn't have to be perfectly treated, but with a room that has reflections and so on and so forth, it's gonna be really hard, especially the more speakers you start adding to it, the more complex it's going to get. I know I'm dealing with that with what I'm building here, but it doesn't have to be a perfectly treated zeroed out room. It just needs to not have a lot of reflections. Next question.
Timo Gallegos in Austin, Texas says, did I miss something? I'm not finding today's show on YouTube. What did I miss? What's up?
It's all over. We've decided to just stop streaming now. YouTube's connection to Zoom's connection to YouTube didn't work today. So we had to, we're recording this, I think. Yeah, we're recording this. And so Jeffrey's going to clip it together and post it later. Next question.
The last one, Jonas Adele from Stuttgart, Germany, is watching today, and he says, what backup remote connections do you include in your kits?
So we, with the ones that we send out with our kits, we send a Meraki out, and in that Meraki there's a cellular connection. So that's the Z3C, I think, is the one that we send out. So that's the backup. And boy, is it a pain in the neck to do that. Trying to get SIM agreements with AT&T or Verizon or whatever without without a phone that they want to tie into is really complex and expensive and painful. No one does it very well. So you understand why, why people just use LiveView, because LiveView manages all those for you, like all those relationships for you, as opposed to dealing with the cell companies directly, which is a little hell that you'll have to work through here, at least here in the United States. And overseas, it's easy as long as you're local. So you can get a SIM really easily if you're in Europe or in other places, but you can't do it as a foreign national. So that's the other distinction that we find. All right. I think now, okay, we got one more. Okay.
Yeah, Douglas came through again with another one.
Trickling in. Yeah, exactly.
Douglas says, if you were building a 15 to 18 rack unit personal rack to be shipped to a residence, would you ship the equipment in the rack or de-rack and then re-rack it?
Absolutely in the rack. You need a shock-mounted rack, but do not make the person on the other end put that stuff back into a rack. You want it all pre-wired and set up and ready to go. And as close to I can push the button and it turns on and connects to the internet as you can possibly get to. That is kind of that's the key to the operation. Yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
Those racks are exactly how gear is mounted in broadcast trucks. If it survives that, it'll survive shipping.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some that got hit pretty hard, but if you have a good shipper, it should be fine. And the other thing, when they get that big, once you get to about 18U, you're really talking about palletizing it. I mean, most of the time, and my recommendation is that you palletize it yourself, as opposed to letting someone else palletize it. There are a lot of integrations of how the wheels go into the pallet that it's useful to do it yourself. That's all I'll say. They get jammed in weird ways, and you end up having to disassemble the pallet to get them out and stuff like that. And so you just want to kind of think through that as well. All right. we've gotten now very close to the top of the hour. I thought we would run out, but we kind of stretched it out slowly. Stay tuned tomorrow. We're going to talk about mixers only, how to pick a mixer and how to think about it. Digital, analog, how big, what kind, field mixer, desk mixer, virtual mixer. We're going to talk about all those things. So, so stay tuned for that. And otherwise, we're going to jump into the after hours. Thank you so much to the producers who asked so many great questions. I was trying to figure out why there were so many more people in Zoom, and I realized we're not streaming. So everyone had to come back. So I was like, there's so many people here. But I was like, did something happen that I didn't know about? But so it was good to see all of you here back in Zoom land. And we will get this recording up. And thank you to the panelists who, of course, had great answers and great discussion. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into after hours. See you there.